everybody, and welcome back to Childcare Confidential. I'm Jessica Hampton, and this is the lovely Katie Dank.
Hello.
Today we have a special guest with us. We're so excited. We have Beth Cannon from Beth Cannon Speaks. Hi, Beth.
Hey.
Hey, thank you so much for joining us. We're excited to talk about your book and all the things that you are doing early childhood-wise. For listeners who may not know about your work yet, can you tell them what you do?
So I do lots of things in the early childhood world. I am a speaker. That's where I spend the majority of my time doing keynote speaking at conferences and events. I also do leadership retreats and team building. I have some online courses that I use for leaders. And then I also have 14 franchises of an enrichment company called Stretch and Grow. And we go into childcare centers, preschools, churches, and we do dance, gymnastics, music, yoga, fitness, things like that. So that was my intro. I never intended to get into childcare. I intended to get into fitness for kids. And it ended up being a complete career in early education. And I've been speaking, I've been doing the Stretch and Grow piece for about 27 years. I've been speaking for about 23. And now I am an author and TEDx speaker as of the end of 2025.
Yeah, you are.
Yes, that was awesome. I was excited to see you kind of walk through that journey. That's big stuff right there.
It was very exciting, very humbling, because those are, two big things that have been on the bucket list for a while.
That's awesome.
That's amazing, actually. All right. So you've trained thousands of leaders across different global brands, but what patterns do you see show up again and again, no matter the industry or the size of a specific company?
So leaders love to tell me about all their problems with their team. And what it really goes back to, I think, as a leader, I think we have to start with ourselves. And, I think it goes back to when you're having an issue, is it because of it's something that you've tolerated, something that you've allowed to continue to happen? Or is it something that you have created in your culture where you created an environment for the things that hijack your happy to continue to happen? And so, everyone talks about it's a lack of accountability. No one's accountable. And I think that is the broken record conversation that I hear a lot, is that nobody wants to work anymore. Why is everyone so fragile? Why can't we just show up and get along? And, and why can't we just get our work done? Like that's the main conversation that I hear. And it's a lot. I mean, it was there before COVID, but since COVID, we're like a new breed of people.
I feel that.
I mean, there's a whole body of research on the post-COVID modern workforce, and we are living in that utopia right now.
Yeah. And we have to adapt as leaders. And I think that is hard for many of us, and myself included. So
well, and especially if you've been doing it a long time. And the paradox that I see is leaders that have been leading for a while, like you and I have, we've been doing this for many, many years. We think we should know. We should know by now. And I
would think.
I know nothing. Everything is a new learning curve. Every day is a new day, and we're dealing with, different people with different world views, different generations, different personality styles. So many different complexities of people, and then to get them to come together and work together in teams, it's no joke.
It's not. It's tough right now. It's definitely tough. I have young adult children too, so I'm feeling it on all sides. But one of the things that you did throughout your career was build an amazing Stretch and Grow franchise. What is one thing maybe throughout building that franchise that you learned about leadership that you didn't necessarily learn in a book, but you learned through your own experiences?
Gosh, I've had so many I didn't see that coming moments, over the last few years. When I started my business, I had been a school teacher and an aerobics instructor. That's what they called it back in the 20th century. But so I didn't really have leadership experience really leading other people, other than I was a cheerleader. I mean, that was the extent of it. And when you step into lead other people, it seemed easy at first. And what I learned was just there's a certain humility about being servant-hearted and realizing that the people are there to really help support the mission and move the business forward rather than the people being there to do what I need them to do. And I think I shifted very early on. I was really fortunate. John Maxwell was coming up. And so I'm a reader, and I think, leaders are learners, and leaders
Absolutely.
are learners. And so I came into contact with a few things that were challenging, and I didn't have the capacity to do it. So when I don't know what to do, I'm like, I don't just sit in the I don't know what to do. I got to figure out how to move out of this pain.
I feel that is me.
I built, Stretch and Grow has an incredible community of mostly women. And early on, I connected with a lot of them, and we started masterminding, 15, 16 years ago, before masterminding was even a thing, and just getting together and saying, hey, these are the challenges. So built a community with people smarter than me in different ways. And, it's not that I'm that smart. I'm smart enough to know who to rub creative shoulders with. So reading,
Absolutely.
learning, listening, leaning in, and building a community of people who can help you navigate those challenges. And then just realize, humility and just the willingness to realize that you might not know everything was key for me.
Yep. I struggled with that one for sure for a minute. In my leadership ability, I thought I knew everything, and it needed to be done one way, and that was my way. And I quickly learned that it was not the correct way to lead. People do not follow you when you lead like that.
Well, and what's hard, especially when you're building and inspiring other leaders, it's hard because you have to expand your capacity for other people's mistakes.
Oof. That's good. Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I feel like that's hitting hard for a lot of people, not just myself. So really appreciate that.
That was dropping some wisdom right there, Beth Cannon.
All right. At what point would you say you realized that you needed to turn hard-earned lessons into practical frameworks instead of just working harder? I think everybody says that all the time. Just work harder.
Right.
It's not always great.
I mentioned, a teacher, and I believe that teaching is like a spiritual gift. Like, it's a giftedness for people and I'm a teacher, right? I love to teach, and I believe if I know a thing, I want to teach a thing. And so it really just, a lot of this, every single framework is born out of a pain or an issue that I experienced in my own business. And so taking that information and putting it together, and I've done, courses in teaching and training for years. I've been the Stretch and Grow International franchise trainer for I think since like 2003. So years ago is when I thought, okay, we had grown, we had scaled. My husband was able to quit his job. He's a master's in finance, and he was able to quit his job and actually come to work with me at that time, that many years ago. And then I started doing the training for corporate, and it was really just out of I had all these things that we had figured out, and I was so excited to get to teach them to other people. So the Stretch and Grow people were like, well, come on, let's bring it. Let's do it. And so that really inspired me. But here's the truth, y'all. Sometimes I'm bossy and I think I have better ideas. So if I'm going to be honest,
I appreciate the transparency because I agree. I feel the same way sometimes.
And because I would see like, oh my gosh, we did this. And I don't say that to be arrogant, but, but truly it weren't just my ideas, but it was, the ideas of some of my employees and some other owners, and just putting those things together. And I think the idea, if we all have this abundant mindset that we collectively have so much talent and so much energy, especially in this industry, we can all learn and grow from each other and learn from each other. So the courses I've been doing for many, many years, I've got Learn to Lead, Stuck to Strategy, Manuals to Modules, a lot of those operational courses. But to put it together in a book was a completely different thing. And honestly, it was the book is strategy, yes, but it's a lot of stories. It's a lot of, there's not a, this one time, I worked with a guy named Steve that was a jerk of a boss, and this is what I learned from him. None of it, it's all, stories from leading my own team and looking really intently to say, are the issues we have, is it a people issue or is it a process issue? And most of the time it was a process issue. And, did we not have the system? Did we not have the strategy? Was I not clear on who's doing what by when? Was I not aware of what gears didn't get turned when I didn't show up to work? So the frameworks just came out of, I walked through such personal and professional hell for a few years, and just the lessons from that season and the hope that other people won't have to walk through what I did.
Wow.
That's
is
inspirational.
Awesome. Yeah, that is really inspirational. Some of us are walking through those seasons a little bit right now. So it's encouraging to hear, somebody that's gone through it and the wisdom that they can share with others. I know I've been in kind of your sessions before, and we talked about, the new generation coming up of employees and things like that, and everything going on in the industry. And I've heard a few times that you've said like burnout's not the problem. So when leaders focus only on burnout, what issue do you feel like they're missing?
So burnout happens before you get to work, I believe. I think that burnout comes from all the other things that we have going on in life. And, different seasons require different capacity. And so, people, particularly in this industry, because there's a great personality test that I love to use in leadership retreats. It's called Predictable Success. And I use it in the book, but I use it for all of my leadership team. And it's only like 4 personality types: visionary, operator, processor, synergist. So many directors are synergists. And in my lived experience, I'm willing to guess probably 70% of them. And what a synergist is someone who's a great team builder. 90% of early childhood leaders were at one time in the classroom, and they got promoted because they were great individual contributors, right? They were great directors, and they were great employees. They had great integrity, that people liked them. And so the owner or whoever was above them tapped them on the shoulder and said, you're awesome, move to the next level. Well, then they get there and they have those people skills, but they don't have the leadership skills. And they find themselves getting so buried and overwhelmed. You know why? Because they're trying to make everybody happy. They still want their friends to like them. They've gone from buddy to boss, and they're overwhelmed, and they don't have the systems and processes in place to make it not an emotional decision.
Yeah.
So they find themselves in analysis paralysis, hesitation nation, overwhelmed so often because they tell themselves a story that they don't have time to put systems in place. They don't have time to do strategic planning. They don't have time to set good boundaries. And so burnout is a symptom. I mean, the World Health Organization says it's like it's an epidemic. But it's so much more than the load at work. And people are carrying so many different things. And if you just look at the job's not that hard. It's the emotional load that we carry, that people walk around sometimes with their luggage and think that it's someone else's responsibility to put it in the overhead bin, like every single day.
Right. I feel
That's exhausting.
Oh, goodness.
It is exhausting.
Yeah. It is exhausting, but I agree with that wholeheartedly. I think that it comes from all of the situations, and I used to, wear the work harder badge like a badge of honor. I was busy. I had things to do. That's what we strived for.
So Jessica, let me drop a little truth bomb on you that I learned in research for the book. Are you ready?
Oh boy.
That is a trauma response, and doers do out of avoidance. Doers do because you're a doer. They're basically we have the feelers and we have the doers, right?
Yeah.
You're a doer.
Oh yeah.
And you can get a lot of things done without a lot of emotion. You can just power through without a lot of emotion and get a lot of stuff done. But yet you work in an industry with a lot of feelers who think, where is your empathy? Do you not?
Oh my goodness. You nailed it.
I mean, I'm living the dream over here. So because I also am a doer, but I learned Adam Grant is a psychologist that did this body of research. And he just talked about how it's a dopamine hit for us to get things done. And so sometimes as a result, we can bulldoze past people and projects and things to get stuff done to avoid having to feel fear or frustration. So we say we're a doer, not a feeler, but we do feel. It's just different feelings, like frustration, like exhaustion, like burnout, because we just think if we just keep moving through all the things that need to get done, at least we're not sitting around doing nothing. And then when everything falls apart, we can't say it's all our fault because we at least tried.
Yep.
It's so crazy that she just hit that so hardcore on the nail for you, Jess.
I'm really working on being more empathetic. So the fact that you said empathy, we're like, oh.
Well, but and here's the hard part is that, feelers think doers don't have any empathy. But empathy doesn't mean that you have to carry someone else's load to feel what they feel. And there are two chapters in the book dedicated to this really specific situation. One of them is called Holding Space While Upholding Standards. Like, how do we hold space? Because people are struggling right now, right? And people are, one of the things the pandemic did was remove the curtain between what's personal and what's professional. So people are carrying a lot right now. And in an industry like ours, they bring a lot that they have to carry because they're in a building full of nurturers. And they're looking for someone to validate them. And we deliver that, right? So many people can deliver that. So how do you hold space for the challenges that people are having, but yet uphold your standards at the same time? Because I can't tell you how many directors get so frustrated because they're like, so-and-so, they're struggling with their mental health. They're struggling with anxiety. They can't come to work because of all the things, but yet it's the tight walk that leaders walk because you still need your people in their positions in order for the business to run and for the families and the children to be served. So you want to be able to hold space for that. And it's not we can't judge whether or not they're faking it or whether it's real. That's not our job to do. But the fact is, it's really hard to hold that kind of space and uphold your standards at the same time. So that's thing one. And then the other chapter, it's called The Proper Use of the F Word.
Okay.
Not the F word that you're thinking.
Oh.
Not the F word that you're thinking, because you can't say
what a bummer.
Wait a second, Beth Cannon. I've known you a little bit. And I can't see that coming out of your mouth.
Well, you should not say it to your employees. If you should be mindful, to hold that one in. But it navigates and really unpacks the mental health crisis and what the mental health crisis is costing employers, and how can you help navigate true challenges with your people, and what are some, how do you have those conversations just to say, like, I understand you're struggling. Help me understand, what is your capacity for this? Because we've created this world where people think that, just because your boss talk to you about your absences, that now you have a toxic boss, or that because something was hard, it harmed you. And that's not all, that's not really the picture.
Yeah, absolutely. We've kind of talked a little bit about the culture crisis and things like that nobody predicted, everything changing the way it did. What do you think kind of caught leaders off guard with all the changes?
When you're diagnosing what it is, I think I think number one, let's start with us, the changes that we experienced, because leaders are now dealing with their own stuff, but expected to carry the load of their team as well. Mm-hmm. And so I think we were kind of unprepared for how different things would be. People, different priorities. And another big thing is the messaging. Like, there's one study that says our brains get like 35,000 messages a day. And because you wake up, all the different social medias that you check, that your messaging, your email, your texting, your this. And so you're getting messages, and our brains were just really not created to take on that much messaging. And that's, I think, one piece is that we are not as equipped to handle things. We talk about, the emotionally dysregulated children all day long, but we don't talk about emotionally dysregulated adults. And the level of emotional dysregulation in adults has really skyrocketed. And until we learn to process our own stuff, it's going to be even harder to create space and tolerate more for your team. So people bringing you their issues and them truly having their issues, but basically now it's it's kind of like leaders are having to manage just a whole lot more, not just with their staff, but with the families and the children. I mean, there's so many layers of complexity to our industry.
Yeah, there are. I don't think a lot of people realize, especially with everything going on right now, it's like, everybody take a pause.
Hold, please.
Take a
Jess, that's your
pause.
favorite. Hold,
Breathe,
please.
hold, please, while we figure out life over here. But everybody just take a deep breath. We're going to be okay.
But that's
We've
the
had
thing.
a lot of change.
Are we taking a deep breath and like coming back into your bodies? Because what, you know, I did the TED Talk, and the premise of the TED Talk was about, we all have a story that scared us, like this time capsule that's stuck deep inside our soul that we didn't realize it was there, and we react, respond, speak, and retreat out of the story that scared us, right? Out of, is it, you know, for me, I mean, my dad lost his job when I was in college, and I mean, my mom hadn't gotten her education because they got married when they were 18, and you know, they didn't have reserves, and they weren't prepared for this, and so I spent so many years of my life like striving and working because the story that I told myself is that if I don't stay one step ahead, everything is going to fall apart, and it's all going to be my fault. And I think if I can predict it, I can protect it. So therefore, you know, it made me a little bit neurotic about, and control freak-ish about, you know, all of the things in the business and trying to make sure that all the moving parts and pieces were in place. And so many, especially women leaders that I work with, we all have a story that scared us, right? And until we go back and identify that and learn to take our pulse, the first chapter is called, you know, take your own pulse first. And it's an acronym, but we've got to go back and figure out, like, why are we reacting and responding in the same way, and figure out how can we regulate before we go delegate. Like we talk about elevate to delegate for so many years. Now it's like we have to regulate our own self and regulate our own nervous system before we spiral out on our own or on other people.
No spiraling. Nobody's spiraling.
No
spiraling. When you talk about that culture crisis and the fact that these people are just not taking the moment to regulate before they process and do all of that good stuff, would you say, is there a moment when you realized this culture that was being created, there's like a wake-up call where people really started to understand what was happening?
I can tell you mine. You know, our business was completely obliterated during COVID. Like my husband and I were on our 25th wedding anniversary in some Caribbean island. And then we get a call on Friday the 13th, like, hey, we're not coming back to work Monday. It's going to be a few weeks. Well, it ended up being the complete obliteration of our whole business. So we had to come back in, rescale the whole thing. It took 2 to 3 years to build back up. And it was hard. It was really, really hard. And I had a leader that'd been with me for a long time. Like, you know, she was with me a total of 15 years. She was great for about 13. Those last 2 years were really hard. She was going through a lot of hard stuff. And when she began to spiral, I noticed my aversion to holding her accountable really was an issue on our culture, because she would do things, not follow systems, you know, get stressed out, not work, you know, there were so many things that were happening, and I finessed my way around her gaps. I stepped in, I did her work for her. I took things off of her plate. I made excuses because I was afraid she would quit and I needed her. And so because I knew she was going through challenges, I just, instead of saying, help me understand what you can do right now, I handled it in a way that was just passive and let me take it back. And that inadvertently created a chasm in our culture that took a few years to come back, because she made the wrong hires, you know, allowed a lot of negativity, a lot of complaining, a lot of bitterness. And you know, it was in my watershed moment. One of my daughters is my only daughter is one of my directors. We were in a meeting, and she witnessed this whole disrespect, yelling, spiraling out situation in a work meeting. And after it was over, she said to me, I cannot believe you let her talk to you like that. She said, that's not how we act. I cannot believe you just sat there and allowed that. And it sent me into a shame spiral. Like no one can call you out like your kid, right? And so
right. Been there.
but it was that moment that I said, something has to change. And I began to really start to identify like what were the gaps. So I hired support, bought into programs, got coaching. She was resistant. So I needed to make sure, is it the person or is this the process? And guess what? I got all my processes in line. It was the person. And so that was a turning point in realizing like, I can't continue to take excuses for things not getting done because they're like, oh, I didn't prioritize that. Or, oh, I didn't have time. Like, no. This is the scope of the work that this business requires. Who is responsible for what by when? And when I relentlessly went back to the systems, some people will say, don't worry about systems. We don't need another project. Let me tell you something. If you don't have systems in place, I'm sorry, you need a project and you need to get your systems in place. I'm not telling you to have a SharePoint with 3,000 documents that nobody knows how to find. What I'm telling you is you've got to get some simple playbooks in place so that your business is not dependent on someone else's brain. Because when that person jets or leaves, you're in a big mess.
Yep. And I honestly, for the longest time, I kept hearing everybody, get your systems in place, get your systems in place. And I just kept thinking, well, that just has to be a printout of everything we do. And that's not necessarily the framework per se that you need to be building. So I think it's important to keep an open mind that systems does not necessarily just mean Excel spreadsheets.
No.
Although I do love a good Excel spreadsheet.
You do.
I do. That is my jam.
It is.
All right. Well, so Beth, you've been dropping a lot of truth bombs. That is now going to be my word of the day. Thank you so much for that. But in honor of your truth bombs, I have a question. And It is, what is the hidden emotional cost of being a leader that no one talks about enough? I feel like you've got a pretty good perspective and probably could answer this one pretty well.
The hidden emotional cost is if you don't get it under control, it's going to permeate through your life and your other relationships. And it is not fair to your family and the people who love you to watch you stay stuck in that dysregulated, stressed, anxious state over something that is work. Your life is exceedingly and abundantly more important than the work that you do. Your work that you do is a job. And yes, that is it may be our purpose or it may be our calling, but who are the watchers of your life? Like, you have people who are watching you to see you get it right. And I promise you, I just became a grandmother and I can look back on my life and I can see the places to where I was so not present for my family, and it wasn't worth it. Like my daughter's one of my directors now, but at one point when she was in high school, I said, wouldn't it be great if you took over Stretch and Grow one day? And she goes, I don't want to live my life stressed out like you. Absolutely not.
Darn.
And now she's been one of my directors for 4 years, but that was hard to hear. And it was a real wake-up call to say, gosh, is this who I really want to be? So I would just say the people who love you the most see your emotional load. And you owe it to them to be the best version of you, because at the end of the day, those are the things that are going to matter. And if you can get, a handle on the issue that's happening on your team, and you look at it and you say, how did I shape this? And how can I shift it? Because I just believe that the school leader is the carrier of the culture.
We couldn't agree more. Jess and I actually not too long ago went through a little bit of a culture shift, and it was a night and day difference. So I 100% agree and promise that if you actually put what you're saying into effect, it does help. You just got to get there.
Yep.
So why would you say, why has accountability become such a loaded word in leadership conversation?
Okay, that's a really good question. Okay, so think of this. When you talk about accountability, like when there's a press conference, right? The sheriff comes out and is like, we're going to hold everyone. We're going to find who did this. We're going to hold them accountable. Well, what does that mean? Like, you're going to hold your people accountable. You're going to put them in handcuffs. Like, what does this holding look like, right? I think it's more than accountability. I think it's ownership, right? Because we all have our responsibilities. We have to be accountable for those responsibilities. But do you own it. And so I think if we can shift it to say, who owns this? Because if you just delegate to someone, I said, hey, Katie, can you do this? You're like, sure, I'll do it. And you do it. But if I say, Katie, payroll is now your responsibility. I'm going to show you how to do it. We're going to put an SOP in place so that way, if you have any questions, you can go back. You've got the simple, step-by-step system of how to watch it, how to do it. The payroll is now on you. So every other Friday, I'm not going to say, hey, Katie, did you run payroll? I'm going to assume that because I transfer that responsibility to you, you own it, it's yours. And so ownership, like we have to realize that like people deserve to be trusted. Again, this is a problem. I could say that to you, Katie, but what if you get busy? Or what if you had a family issue, or you got sick, or your friend asked you to go to happy hour on Thursday night?
Not happy hour.
And you just forgot, and then no one got paid. Like those are issues. And so when you give people the assignments, again, we've got to be in that communication and make sure that it's not just holding people accountable, it's transferring that ownership.
That makes me so stressed, but also it's an optimistic way to look at it too. The fact that you're putting it back into them.
Unpack that. Why does that make you feel stressed?
I feel like as a leader myself in a different role than what Jessica is, because obviously she is the owner. I'm just our executive director. I shouldn't say just, but I am the executive director. I take my job very serious. I love what I do, but sometimes delegating those big tasks almost seem more monumental than if I just did it myself. So to give someone the responsibility and trust that they're going to do it the same way that you would want it done is stressful. It's not impossible, but it is 100% stressful. And we have a great team. I should say that. Like, we very much do. Not discrediting them.
Well, and that's why a lot of leaders stay stuck in burnout, and yours truly included. I mean, I just went through this whole thing with, yesterday we didn't have all the curriculum lined up. And I'm like, why is this coming back to me? Because I did not follow through. So even though I delegated and transferred the responsibility for curriculum, there was a piece that we had a little bit of a changeover, and someone didn't fully understand that it was her job to wrap that piece up. And guess what, Katie, when I traced it back, I was the disconnect.
Your little root at the very tippity top of the map.
Yes. And so, but again, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, how did this not get done? And I look back and I thought, oh, I said it, but then was I really clear about who is doing what by when? And I, as the leader, was not clear. But guess what? It was a learning opportunity. It was a learning experience. And, it's not like you're going to read a book or do a framework or do a system and then you're never going to have any issues anymore. Because systems are, systems that are living, and, we're people in a human business. So nothing is ever like set it and forget it, one and done. But having it in place, I'm telling you, it's a game changer.
Love a good system and a good spreadsheet. I already mentioned that, but Jess knows all too well that is something I'm passionate about. But I feel like every system, no matter how good it is or you think it is, always could have room for improvement. It's probably a piece that a lot of leaders don't take into account. Okay, so when a leader realizes and says, something's broken here, what is the first shift that they should make instead of trying to fix everything at once? Because you were just telling me that I should unpack it, because I knew you could feel my stress as soon as we started deep diving into it. But for you, what's the first shift you think that they should prioritize instead of everything at once?
I would say, before you point fingers, check your own pulse. Was it a you issue or was it a they issue? And then walk it back. Where did the disconnect happen? Was it a people person, or was it a process person? Was it a process? And I know that sounds really, really simple, but most of those challenges boil down to what did I create? What kind of environment did I create? And what am I tolerating? And then what am I celebrating? Did I create the environment to where I didn't expect people to follow through? Because that director that I had that I mentioned, and we call her Jolene in the book, by the way. She's kind of a composite character.
Okay.
Jolene. I'm from Tennessee, right?
Yes, I love it.
You might as well call somebody Jolene. But I can look back again and see at the time, I thought, why is this person not doing these things I know she's supposed to do? But I look back and see. So check your own pulse before you go pointing fingers.
Okay, everybody who is listening, make sure you hear that again for yourself. Check it yourself first.
But also, I do believe that there's a power in that kind of humility.
Yeah.
Rather than coming unhinged when you think somebody's screwed up or they've messed up or they didn't follow through. There's power in the pause of looking back and tracing what was the disconnect and what went wrong, because you don't want it to repeat. But
Right.
we have this thing, like, we think it's an attribution error that we have in our own personalities. When someone else doesn't do something, let's say someone's late to work, we're like, oh my gosh, how inconsiderate and selfish could they be? They know their coworkers waiting for them in that classroom, and now they're out of ratio, and how rude and inconsiderate. And that's what you think. But yet when you're late, there was traffic and it was a horrible morning, and you showed up a few minutes late and you're sorry. So we tend to assign motives to other people that we wouldn't always necessarily assign to ourselves.
Oof. Hot diggity dog. Well, I can't even have a rebuttal against it. I feel like what you're saying is just factual.
I mean, and it's research. Like I said, I learned so much researching this book. I mean, I'm a former high school English teacher, right? So it felt like a whole research project for me.
You do love a good project, don't you? All right. What gives you the most hope about future of leadership right now?
I see a willingness for people to learn. I have a leadership certification program called Learn to Lead. We run that cohort 3 times a year. And I just am starting to see, more people are coming into the course, like really learning and really understanding and wanting to do better. So I'm starting to see people look around and say, this is above my pay grade. Like, I need skills. I need information. I need community. I need to learn from other people. So I really do see a lot of people wanting to learn, wanting to read, wanting to lean in, wanting to listen, going to conferences. Live events are so important right now. And I think that's where I'm glad that we're headed back there, because people just need community. And even if you go and you just sit and you absorb and you walk away, or you take an online course, or you connect, or even if you just listen to a podcast, and if you take a nugget away, that might need to be the nugget you needed to get through that day. And I think as you become wiser, you just become a collector of nuggets that help you process in every situation. And you continue to get wiser and smarter and stronger, and you create more and more capacity the longer that you lead, if you're willing to look at your own gaps and grow and expand.
You would think that some people could be able to take that information that you just said, and really internalize it to understand. But I think a lot of people really struggle with that. I'm also one of the ones who maybe struggles with it. But it is inspirational, and it does make sense. And I do feel like, given where we're at too, and the chaos of the world, if you could just take into account all of the outside forces, you would feel so much better.
Well, and this is what we know. The definition of insanity: doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. And when you finally get sick of yourself, and you finally get sick of encountering the same problems over and over and over again, if you want that kind of freedom, I call it DSD, you're going to do something different. But you have to be, it's just like when someone's stuck in addiction. Mm-hmm. They don't come out of that until they literally hate what they've done to their life. Like, they have to get to the end, to the bottom, and they have to literally hate their existence. I don't think people change unless they hate where they have found themselves. And I literally, Katie, I hated where I found myself in my business. I didn't hate my business, but I did not love who I had become. And I did not love that cringy, awful feeling of the negativity and that was coming from someone on my leadership team. And I felt like it was really negatively affecting our culture. And then I got mad about it. But when I finally got mad about it,
it's when you did something about it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Oh.
Well, but here's the thing. I I was in a really hard season. I prayed that she would go and that other doors would begin to open for her, and I tell the story in the book. But, if you've got someone on your team and they're not teachable or coachable, you cannot coach attitude. For someone to change their attitude and to have a change of heart, you cannot motivate someone to do that. They have to have a deep internal knowing that they are not the best version of themselves to do this job. Maybe they're for this position, for where they sit in your company, unless they are willing to do that inner work, they're not going to change.
Yeah. Well, you're not wrong. You're very, very correct. Oh, goodness. All right. Well, with all of the nuggets of wisdom, all of the questions, I'm so sorry we overabundance gave them all to you right now, Ms. Beth. Did you have anything else that you wanted to add or say to any of our listeners?
Well, I just want to say, if you're leading a team right now, accountability is off the chain, attitudes are up. You are not wrong. You're feeling it. What you feel is real. But I want to encourage you, like, there are things that you can do about it. So, I'm not sure at the time when this is gonna go out, but Transform Your Team. It's available on Amazon. And so the book, it took a long time to put in. Like I said, it's a lot of stories for what I went through, both personally and professionally, and things I tolerated, things I celebrated, and some big mistakes that I made, and some strategies and frameworks to help you from that. And then I also got a whole lineup of courses and conferences coming up this year, going into schools and doing leadership retreats and team building around the concepts in the book.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for being our special guest today. If any of our listeners have not, you should 100% buy Miss Beth's book. We will link it below in our comment section. She's a fabulous speaker, a phenomenal human, and it has been nothing but a privilege to have her on our podcast. So that is it for today. Like, follow, subscribe, and we will see you next time.
Thanks, Katie.
Mm-hmm.